Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to episode 10 of Planet FPL Correspondent Week. And so far, we've had a lot of correspondents give caution to their FPL assets. I'm certain it won't happen on this one. Let me introduce you to our Newcastle United correspondent, Simon Bibby. How are you, Si?
Very well, thanks, James.
Good stuff. I want to talk first about Eddie Howe. Timestamp, just in case it's the afternoon of Tuesday, August the 6th. And applications for the England manager job closed on Friday. Is there any concern?
I think at the start of the summer, there's been a lot of upheaval in Newcastle above Eddie Howe, which there's never a dull moment at my football club. But the change in ownership and the incomings of Paul Mitchell as sporting director and him bringing his own team. So you saw James Bunch, I think it is, has joined as well as performance director. They worked together at Monaco. And Eddie came out and did quite a strong worded interview where he was talking about the needing the right environment and support. And basically there was like a mini power struggle, I think, for a week or two. And it wouldn't surprise me if he used that England position as a bit of leverage. But it seems to have settled down now. I think he's well into planning for the new season. There's potentially a big signing or two on the horizon, which feels like an Eddie Howe signing. So yeah, I think for a while there was a slight concern that he might go, and there might be more of an overhaul of the club this summer. But no, not now. I think he's his mind's locked in and ready to go for the season ahead.
If he was offered it, what do you think he'd do?
I think
Is
it'd
it
be
an England job?
completely Yeah, I think it'd be completely dependent on what he felt his position and strength was in Newcastle. Like, with Amanda and Merdad, he had two people, very senior people at the club that were sort of staunch supporters of him, and they obviously left and sold their stake this summer. And I think he used that position and that leverage, and I think he just wanted to know that he was in a position to kind of have his say on signings. Now, I think the fan base would agree that sometimes he goes a little bit too, leans a little bit too into the Premier League experience. And it would be interesting to see how that develops with Paul Mitchell. We've obviously made some amazing signings at youth level and let one or two go this summer.
We noticed.
No, I think we're in a pretty good place now. I think if we get the two signings that everyone kind of knows that we need, I think he'll be happy, and we'll rock on.
Yeah, he has drifted to third favourite in the betting for next England manager, which suggests, we're probably getting towards decision time for England, suggests it probably won't be him. My initial reaction was that he'd turn it down, actually, because would he ever get the opportunity to walk back into a club like yours within the Premier League again? And I think the England job will come for him at some point in the future. He doesn't need to rush. He's still relatively young. So no, I expect him to stay. Do you just want to touch briefly on them changes? Because people might have heard change of ownership and gone, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so Amanda Staveley, I think everyone kind of that's followed the club and the news stories is aware of her. So she was instrumental in getting the club out of Mike Ashley's hands and basically funneling Pith into the Premier League. And that's kind of where her experience sort of lies, is with basically business investments. So it was interesting to see her in this role. Like, everyone around the club, and I think even the players, were quite sad to see her go. But from my perspective, it always felt like their 10% was always going to get diluted. That was always the plan. Whether it was supposed to happen this summer after 3 years, or whether the shambles around the PSR kind of moved that along. So they sold their ownership to the existing owners. So that is, oh God, who's that? There's basically some right-wing Tories that now own 10% or 15 to 20%, and PIF has bought the others.
So your ownership is getting better by the day, is it?
Yeah. Yes, the Saudis and Tories own the football club now. They seem like they're all right, and I don't think they've been involved in all the shit that's been going on in the UK in the last 2 weeks. Anyway, let's not talk about that. So yeah, basically, I don't think they can afford to stay on the trajectory that the club's going on. In terms of like valuation and how much is getting invested into it on that side of it. So yeah, it's sad to see them go, but I think once you saw like how close we were to messing up the PSR deadline, and ultimately the responsibility lied with them two at the time. I think we're now in a much better place with the new sporting director and the performance director in place. So I think that might be evident with some of the signings it looks like we're trying to make.
A cynic would maybe say that Amanda Staveley was a convenient face to ease the media transition of the ownership. Would that be fair or not?
Try not to make a joke about her face at this point. No, I don't know. I think I think she's obviously not had a job in football before, but since she's left, I think she did an interview with The Athletic, and there's been stories about like potentially even getting involved in your club.
Yes,
So
I
I
have
think it
heard,
was,
which
I think it
concerns me, by the
was,
way,
yeah. Well,
because
if you're
I know where her contacts are, and I don't want any of it.
exactly fine, fair enough. I'm sure you're in a position as a club, I think, and you've already got like a American investment thing. So, but I think the opportunity's there for her, and she's obviously got Newcastle in her CV as a 3-year success story, really. But this is 6-7 years in the making. That she could go to another anyone that wants that investment now is, that's where she'll end up next. And I think she'll do a good job. She was great in terms of like the women's team, like fantastic and
Yes.
that aspect of it. So really, really happy, I think, overall with where they started and where they've kind of left the club. I think it's obviously in a much better place than when they started.
Yeah, your women's team will be in the Super League soon enough, when a couple of years, I'd say.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and
Yeah.
even this weekend, like this, we've got the Seller Cup, which we have the women's team playing directly before the men's team, which is nice, like in a full stadium, and playing AC Milan, which is a nice club. I don't know if you saw they recently came out and said they were the first one that's going to allow. I think they're going to sign extensions to women that are pregnant in the last year, their contracts and things. So
okay,
I wouldn't be surprised if something like that comes along. But yeah, really fantastic what they're doing with the women's team. And you're right. I think once they get into that Super League, then you'll see Newcastle become will probably be a bigger women's team than men's in terms of like winning stuff. So
okay. I take it from a PSR perspective, the club can now spend, right?
Yeah, it's up for debate exactly how much, but we essentially we had the last year, I think, of Ashley's reign in the last PSR cycle where we just made no money at all, and then obviously you had the first 2 years of the Staveley and Piff investment, which was quite significant. So it was always going to be a rocky one. I don't think we'll get ourselves into a situation like that again, purely because I think that the team are in place now and the backroom staff, and you've obviously got like from the chairman down, everyone's kind of had a couple of years outside of Paul Mitchell and Bunce that have come in, who aren't responsible on the money side, apart from Mitchell obviously signing players. So I don't think we'll get in that situation again. I think we do have money to spend, debatable whether it's 100 million, 200 million. I think basically we're just trying to sign 2 key positional players in centre back and right wing. And if the deals are there, we'll make them.
We'd identified on the pod we did on Patreon in either March or April that there were 8 clubs that were going to be on the edge of PSR if they didn't sort themselves out. We identified one was you. But what we didn't really realise was that going into that final week that yours was going to be the one that was the biggest mess, actually. And it's not good for the club that you've lost Anderson and Minteh, is it?
No. I think Minteh is it's interesting because basically with PSR, that's the way you kind of get around it or circumvent the PSR rules now, is selling homegrown players, which I'm not sure that was the intent of PSR, but it's definitely the way that all clubs are working, the kind of Chelsea model. I think the Minteh one's going to potentially hurt more than the Anderson. Yeah, Anderson was like a local lad, but I think you could see even positionally, like we had to move him around and kind of find a role for him. Good player, solid player. I think he'll do really well for Forest. But yeah, I think Minteh's the one. Seeing as it's a position that we need to strengthen anyway, and we had to let like what looks like a real kind of super talent go to a Premier League. I'll call Brighton a rival at the moment.
I mean, is it fair to say Minteh might have started for you if it stayed?
It's an interesting one. I don't think Howe would have thrown him in. Depends what he did in pre-season, but we've had kind of a weird pre-season.
That right wing position has been a nuisance problem for you. I know Jacob Murphy's done really well, but it's been a bit of an issue, isn't it? People have known you want something now.
Yeah, we're into like our 5th season of Miguel Almiron, and it's just it just needs to stop. Like, surely there's a football club out there that will buy him. I don't know how he's not. I mean, the only reason he's not in Saudi Arabia at the moment is because I think he doesn't want to go, and he's turned it down. But yeah, and the club's too nice. Like, it's interesting. You look at like how Chelsea are treating Conor Gallagher. I don't think we would do that to any of our players, even though even if a 30 million bid came in for Almiron, you translate it into Spanish and ask him to pack his bags, whatever that is. But I don't think we would go to that extent of freezing them out, and I think that's part of the problem, right? And maybe that'll change now that the ownership's changed and there might be a bit more ruthlessness. But yeah, we need to get him out. I think Minteh would have, by the end of the season, as long as he was playing the way Eddie Howe wants him to and tactically was fitting in, which is a question mark around him, I think. I think Brighton's a good move for him. And from what I've seen in pre-season, it looks like he's kind of flourishing in a slightly different role to what he'd be playing for us.
Is Minteh on your FPL radar at 5.5?
He's been in a few drafts, but not currently. But he's definitely on the watch list.
Okay. What's the objectives for Newcastle now this season? No European football, despite many songs in the away end at Brentford on the final day. Unfortunately, there is no European football this year. Is that possibly a blessing in disguise?
What do you bring that up for?
Well, because
yeah.
it was a bit daft. I know no one thought Man United were going to beat Man City, but it was a bit daft to jump the gun. Sorry, Geordies.
No, that's typical of us, isn't it? The first team to finish seventh and not getting into Europe for that.
Listen, he's probably fifth is going to get in the Champions League for eternity, and obviously my team finishes fifth and doesn't get in, right? So I know how you feel.
To answer the question, if Eddie Howe doesn't get us into the Champions League, I think he's gone at the end of the season.
Wow, that's big. So he should just piss off and take the England job then.
No, because he'll get us into the Champions League, so we'll be fine. You know, I've talked about this last year. Eddie Howe's 1 game a week mags. You know, it'd be interesting to know what the other correspondent said in terms of our league position. I saw Adam P's initial prediction of 11th place. That's hilarious. But I think with 1 game a week, you'll see us hopefully and potentially return back to form of 2 seasons ago. I'm pretty confident, particularly if we get those 2 signings, centre back and right wing. Yeah, I'm very confident.
All right, well let's do it now. We normally do it at the end. Go on then. How many of the correspondents you think predict you'd finish top 4?
25%.
It's 5 out of the 19 only.
About 25%.
In terms of fifth, which obviously we said could be enough, only another 4. So more than half the correspondents have got you at 6th or below. In terms of an overall league table, though, in terms of an average, they would have you as 5th as a finish. I personally would probably have you for 4th at the moment. Personally, I think of the teams between 3 and 8th. Or it just removing City and Arsenal, you're the ones I can see the biggest growth in this year, I think. And the non-Europe thing does massively help because of what you've said. You had the combination of what hurt you last year was that, but then the injuries, which maybe partly came because of that and the intensity of them playing twice a week as well. I think you were in a strong position till the injuries happened. I think if you remove the really dark period of the winter, where you were just flogging the same 11 for 90 minutes, game after game in the busiest part of the season. If you remove that period and look at the rest of the season, I think you comfortably finish top 4 again. So for me, yeah, I expect to see, I expect to see you get back into the Champions League. Yeah. But it's interesting you say that it would be that big of an objective that if you didn't, you'd change manager.
Yeah, I think so. I think the change in ownership, if Amanda was still in charge, I don't think I'd be so objectively sure about it. I just think I think the club's looking to move into a different level now, and I think that's the kind of expectation, and he'll know it as well. And you know, if we finish 5th and get to the Champions League, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
I think it's Champions League football for us, and I think it's interesting with the PSR. Then the sales we had to make, I think, we kept our 3 crown jewels. So they were like Isak, Bruno, and Gordon, which I think no one at the start of the summer even would remotely dream of him being in like transfer rumours away. I think we kept those three, but I think that there's going to be a natural point in this kind of cycle where we go the levels we're getting to that we're going to need to make a big sale. And I think if we don't get the Champions League, I think one or potentially more of those will, it likely might be their last season if we don't make it. I think they're at the level where they should be playing the Champions League. I think one season outside of Europe, because of the way that the club's kind of embrace them. And I think all three players love the club, clearly. I think Bruno's even in with a shout of being a club captain this year if Trippier goes and we don't see Lascelles in the first team. And yeah, depending on who we sign. So I think it's that big a season for us and for Eddie.
Okay. There's an opportunity to get a very good start as well, right? What we make of the fixtures?
Yeah, good. I think everyone's sort of transfixed on the first fixture. Any home game, I think for us is
Strong.
everyone's going to see that as attractive against any team in the league. But having a promoted team, I think that's why every Newcastle on everyone's radar. Am I right in thinking that Isak was in the auto team? Because I think he was in mine. Does that mean he was in everyone's? Because I'm still surprised, man. His ownership is the highest in the game.
My opinion, he should be in the auto team, the pre-selected team, the pick team, the dead team, the different whatever. Alexander Isak should be in it, mate. You know my opinion.
So if he's in the auto team, he's in 55% of teams. That means 45% of players have physically removed Isak from their FPL drafts.
No, I don't think every auto team is the same.
Is it not? Okay,
no, but you do tend to get a lot that are similar, but I don't think he's not the exact same auto team for everybody, because then there is a danger that someone will have some bizarre high ownership. So no, I would say there's probably more people putting him in than taking him out. That would be my guess. It's interesting you say that on any home game being good for you. You do actually play Tottenham, Man City, and Arsenal all at home in 3 of your first 5. Now, I don't need to repeat the scores of the recent games against Tottenham, but in terms of a group of 5 home games, you've got the 2 toughest ones within the first 5 home games. And I do look at the first 5. I think the first 5 is particularly attractive. Southampton at home, Tottenham at home, game week 3. But Bournemouth, Wolves, and Fulham are all sticky, aren't they? None of them are gimmies.
No, we dropped an absolute clanger at Bournemouth last season. We're lucky that Pedro Neto got injured in the Wolves game, and Fulham, I think we had a positive cup result there, and I think that kind of spurred us on.
You didn't play well in the league game, if I remember correctly. Didn't Eddie Howe have a side of the pitch team talk like half hour in or something? You were somehow still at 0-0.
Yeah, he did. But I think you can kind of put last season in a box. I think partly because he said the injuries, and I don't think any of those 3. Well, the Bournemouth one was at the tail end of our terrible run, if I remember. A really bad performance, and it's interesting. I'm not so high on the Newcastle defense, but I think that first fixture is prime for a bit of a rotation. But yeah, you'll know more than me when those Manchester City and Arsenal fixtures come and whether they're in and amongst European ties. Because if they are, I think again, good time to play them potentially for us.
So 6, yes, will be Champions League, I believe, the week before and the week after, I think. I've not got it in front of me, but the Arsenal game will certainly be after Champions League. That's a definite. So yeah, may play into your favour a little bit with them obviously having. I guess it depends on what the fixtures they have at that point as well. They might play on the Champions League on the Tuesday, and the game might not be till the Sunday, for example, right? So in that case, probably doesn't matter so much. But yeah, something worthwhile keeping an eye on. I think nearly every team would walk out of your place and go, "Yeah, I'll take a point." That would I'll be at your place up in the gods via a helicopter in game week 3. Offer me to draw now, I take it. Of course, I think it's one of the rare ones I would feel that way, because it's such a tough place to go when you're at it.
For punishment, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't at the 6-1. I was at the 4-0. So yeah, Newcastle's a great away day. I love your City, mate. Maybe Marc Guehi loves your City as well. We should clarify, we are pre-recording this on Tuesday morning. The big Monday evening news suggested that Newcastle were now pushing really hard to try and get a deal done for Marc Guehi. We think at the time recording a first bid has been rejected, but it does feel like this might happen, Sire.
Yeah, a couple of the guys that I'm in contact with that seem to have contacts with the club, are pretty confident that they've known that 65 will get it done. I think the initial total is 60. I think it could just come down to like whether the clubs can agree on add-ons. I think it will need 65 to get it done, but whether that's like an additional 5 million in add-ons, by all accounts, personal terms already been agreed. Players told his agents to get the deal done. I think everyone's seen that video going around in the England camp where he was talking about St James's Park being the best stadium he's played in outside Sellers Park. So yeah, perfect signing for us if we can get it. I think it just proves what it demonstrates, like we are ready to kind of take that step. Like it's interesting. I was listening to the additional podcast that you do and talking to I think a couple of correspondents. I think it's the West Ham lad at the end was talking about the levels, or you were talking about the levels of signings, and I think that just that type of signing would put us into the mix of like top four, because I think a lot of people probably expected that he would go to like Liverpool potentially as a signing.
That impressed massively for England. I don't think there's any doubt that if he came to your place, he would get in the team. Particularly, obviously, Sven Botman, we expect him back. What sort of Christmas time, maybe?
Bit early, I think. He's already on the grass. I think it'll be October, November. But yeah, he can play left. He can play right side. So
gives you the option of a back three possibly as well.
Well, yeah, Eddie's played that a couple of times. I wouldn't expect to see a back three.
Livramento and Hall as wing backs. No.
Yeah, but potentially
longer term, maybe.
They could potentially play it. I think it gives him an excuse to get Dan Burn in the team as well.
What's really interesting about if this move does happen for Marc Guehi, I think that if he stays at Palace, he's perfectly interesting from an FPL perspective. I would probably recommend that people didn't have him in their teams at the moment who don't know where he's going. Newcastle is one of the few clubs that he could move to, and he's not an auto pick. Like if he went to Liverpool, I think you just go put him in. But with yours, because he's other interesting 4.5 assets, he's not definitively the one, right? You wouldn't just go, I've got to put Marc Guehi in my team. If he joins you.
No, I think 4.5. Yeah, there is some interesting picks. And I think it's interesting because the knock-on effect of Trippier is pretty big. And whether he stays or goes, or whether he starts the season. So as you said, like the time of recording, we've still got 2 pre-season games, but no one's going to play more than 90, 115 minutes in either of those. So I don't think you're going to learn that much from our last 2 pre-season matches. But I think that, the knock-on effect on all of our back four is potentially big, because Trippier goes and then Livramento will be nailed at right back. If we sign Guehi, then that kind of potentially, I think Schar's nailed. His price is ridiculous. Like, no one's paying 5.5 for
I might
him,
be.
but okay.
I'll explain in a minute.
Fine. You're bench boosting Gameweek 1. Yeah. Actually, I mean, to be fair, I don't know. Let's have a look at his ownership. 7.6, pretty high actually.
I mean, generally speaking, if you're looking longer term, no, I can't make the case to pay 5.5 for Fabian Schär. Can't.
No. Trippier's ownership 14%. I just think, I know how Eddie Howe works. If none of, and this is probably a good hot take, I don't think Anthony Gordon starts the season either. I don't think Trippier
That's going to crash a few teams, mate.
I don't think he does. I think the minutes haven't been there. We'll see what you put. Like, as I said, he's going to play 90 minutes, 115 maybe this weekend. That's not enough.
To clarify, you've got 2 home games on consecutive days, right? Is it Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah.
2 different games, 90 minutes each day at St James's. So if you played 90 minutes in a game, that's not enough. It is, Si.
He won't play that. He won't.
You just said he might play 115 over the 2 days. It's enough.
Yeah, but it'll be more like 60 and 60, I think, something like that.
So you don't think he'll play 2 different teams?
No, I don't think he will. I think the guys that have started and have been there, so Barnes, Hall, I think, so the guys that have been there through pre-season, I think will probably start the first game 75 minutes. Some of them might get 90. The likes of Willock have just kind of come back. they've got quite a lot of players to fit in now. So I think it'll be interesting. I think they'll start a game, but how much I don't think he's going to push them to like do 90 minutes straight off the bat. And therefore I don't think Gordon will start because Barnes is fit and he's played quite well in pre-season. I just don't think he will. That's my personal take. I can tell you what I think the 11 is now, if you want. That's helpful.
No, we'll do that. We'll do that
that
near
later.
the end. But I tell you what, I'd love you to do for us after the weekend. Get a tweet out that I'll retweet and tell me if you still feel the same.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Just because I think there's a possibility after this weekend you might have a different opinion and might think that he's going to start, and we should share that if that's the case, because a lot of people will very understandably want to start with him, myself included. Just to come back onto these 4.5 defenders, we've obviously got Livramento, we've got Burn with good ownership at the moment, who can cover a couple of different positions. Lloyd Kelly's been bought, and Lewis Hall. Who's the best of that crop for you as it stands? And is the answer to that question somewhat dependent on what you've already said about trips?
Dependent on trips and what your strategy is. So I'm heavily considering a wildcard 4, which for me means that Hall is the best option. I think for the first opening 2 or 3 fixtures, I think he'll start the season. I think there's fixtures potentially, like you mentioned, where he might opt to play Dan Burn. But I think it's Hall's played the majority of minutes pre-season, finished the season really strongly. He is effectively like a new signing. He was on loan last season, and we paid a good chunk of money and activated that clause. Whether it had to happen or not, I'm not sure. It's still a bit murky as to what the terms were, but
no,
a fantastic option.
You don't say. I'm not even gonna bring up Vlachodimos on this podcast. Keep going. Okay, I just did.
Yeah.
Carry on.
I didn't mention how much money we got for our two signings. So I don't want to. Let's not go backwards, James. Let's look forward. So opening 3, I'd say Hall's the best pick. Depending what happens with Trippier, I don't know. I think he'll still be with us at least for the first half of the season. It's a weird one. That it might go down to why. Yeah, I think because otherwise, if we sell him, we're going to have to get another player in to play right back.
Okay. Yes, probably. If Tripp stays, though, is there not a case that Livramento would play left back rather than Hall?
No.
Because that was favoured. I know Hall did really well towards the end of the season, but for long periods last season, that was the favoured route that Eddie Howe took, right?
It was. It was because Hall wasn't, and he's admitted it himself. Like again, some really nice interviews come out this pre-season. He talked about he wasn't up to the level. He wasn't fit enough to play the Eddie Howe system. He wasn't tactically aware enough to play it, and he is now, and he's confident. I'm very bullish on him starting left back. I just think there'll be a period in the season where, because of his age, and if results start to dip, he might come out of the team. But I think to start the season, he's the starting left back, and I think he'll end the season starting left back, and he'll be the England left back for quite a while. I think.
Okay.
I'm that high on him. He can play multiple positions as well, so everyone knows his ability, and he scored in pre-season. A bit of a fluky goal, but it still counts, I suppose.
If something was to develop where you knew sort of within the next week that Trips was definitely going, would that change your decision to want to go Livramento instead?
It would if I wasn't doing the first 4-week wildcard. I just think he's a different player profile. I don't know if Tino's ever going to be a fantastic fantasy asset at 4.5 if we can get our defence back to where it was 2 seasons ago. And with Marc Guehi, I think we can, because he's got that pace. With Pope and someone in the back line with pace, I think we could play that high line again and potentially get back to that levels of clean sheets. In which case, obviously, 4.5 for Tino is a great price. I think just Hall offers more like routes to go. I think he has the potential to be on set pieces. And I think he's basically like he could morph into like a mini Trips playing on the other side. And that's where, if you look at the strength of the team, whereas previously with the Trips, it was always that kind of Longstaff, Trips, Almiron, or Murphy triangle. Whereas actually, I think now you look at the strength of the side, it's more geared towards the left. With Isak likes to float out there. You've obviously got Gordon, Hall playing, gets up there really well, and then you've got either Joelinton or like Willett as well. I think that's kind of you might see. It'll be interesting to see if we have even more of a left-sided bias. I think that's the sort of thing that can be coached into a team. I don't think Eddie really had that last season, wasn't able to kind of develop on that. But it'd be interesting to see if that's kind of where the team bias goes.
Okay, so Lewis Hall for you. For those who got a bit more fear and just want to stick with something that's definitive playing, should they stick with Dan Burn, or would you tell those that are on Dan Burn to move?
I would move off Dan
Okay.
Burn. I think he'll start the season. I think he'll start the season regardless. Like any player we sign now is not coming in. That includes Guehi. He's not walking into the first 11. You saw it with Botman last year. You see it with every signing. We're too close to the start of the season now, which is why I'm kind of quite hesitant on Trippier and Gordon starting the season. But as you say, like depends what happens this weekend. It wouldn't surprise me if they're both in from the start, but I doubt you're getting 90 out of Gordon. Anyway, if he does start 65, 70.
What if Tripp signed a new contract? Just suddenly. Would you want him at 6? Or is it the same thing? You don't think he starts game week 1, so therefore no.
He's the changes to BPS, I think the cross spamming that was a big part of his appeal, I think has been diminished a bit. So it all comes down to whether if we're keeping clean sheets at the same rate as some of the other 6.0 defenses, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool. I think that's it, isn't it? There's no defenders 6 million plus from any other team. So we need to be a top 4 defense. He'll get the assists and yeah. I don't think he'll get. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't score again this season. I just don't think he's kind of his free kicks are slightly overrated. I know he's pinged a few nice ones in, but as I said, I'm be interested to see, and I think we're kind of ready to almost move on from it. I don't think Trips as a player he was 2 years ago. So
he's 33 now, coming up to 34. Yeah. It's understandable, mate.
It is. I don't think he'll get a new contract.
Okay. Fabian Schär at 5.5. So what was your reaction to that price?
Shocked a little bit. I think, the fact that he pegged 4 goals last season is the only reason that they've done that.
But Romero's in at 5. And he scored 5, so
yeah, strange to be honest. I don't know why they decided to price him at 5.5.
It looked like they've targeted him and went, no one's having Fabian Schär this year. That with the 4.5s you got available, that's how it feels.
It's too sexy for the game, James. That's it.
As I told you though, I may still start with him.
Oh, great pick. If you're doing a bench boost wankery or looking to wild card 2, like absolutely, like steam into him. One game against Southampton where they're potentially going to defend deep. He'll have opportunities to run onto it. He's going to start, and I think once Guehi's in, he'll partner Guehi, and then once Botman's back, I think you'll eventually see Guehi potentially go to the right, or they'll mix minutes. So I think he's up until Christmas, I think he's an absolute lock in the team. It's just whether, as I say, you want to pay 5.5 with us still not 100%, looking like we're going to get back to the defensive team.
Just thinking back for Dan Burn owners, if the Guehi deal does happen, Dan Burn presumably is no longer part of your best 11. Would that be fair?
He's not, but he's in Eddie Howe's best 11 in his heart.
So he could play left back instead of Hall, right?
He could play left back.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Kelly can also play, and it's one thing I've noticed in Kelly.
He must be gutted, Lloyd Kelly.
I don't know. I don't think he came in expecting on a free transfer to be first 11. I think he'll get opportunities, and he's got that diag pass, and I saw that him and Isak linked up quite nicely a few times over the top. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just comes in and plays Spurs, because if he's in the team, he can hit that diagonal over the top. Mate.
Yeah, I hear you.
Triple captain Isak game week 3 is on.
I'll tell you what,
He's a good player.
if I get the St. James's and Lloyd Kelly suddenly come into the Newcastle team, people go, that's a bit suspicious. How am I going to get that message from my position in the clouds to Ange? How am I going to get that message to him? I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. I'm very keen on Nick Pope as a long-term option. So 5 million, is he the best 5 million keeper?
Martinez, I think, is an option. I think
not Pickford.
Yeah. I mean, I'm too scarred from Pickford last season. I'm one of those that had him for the first 8 game weeks, wild cards him out, and yeah, I don't know if I could ever go back there.
Okay.
Pickford and T-Rex arms. No, I think he's burnt me too many times. Pope's a good pick at 5. I thought with his injury, there was a small, and the fact that we regressed defensively, there was a small chance he might have been 4-5, but he'd have just been auto in everyone's team.
Oh my god, yes. So he would be in everyone's team.
Yeah. So no, five's a decent pick, and I think from you look at the keeper signings we made, we were potentially in for Ramsdale at one point where it would have been debatable, but I think there's no debate. He's number 1 and locked for this season. Yeah, good pick.
Yeah, I think that's a very consistent horse. Many of us will have owned him at one point or another over the last few years. I think you know what you get. Consistency. If you pick him, stick with him. Don't get frustrated with it. I would say that's just an in and forget, unless there's a 4.0 appeals and you really want to save some money. Just we learned that from Pickford last year, right? If you've got a decent one, just let it go. And Nick Pope could keep cleans in any game, and we'll certainly, I think, with Nick Pope, like, don't do analysis on Newcastle defensively last year, because one of the reasons that you conceded so many goals was because he wasn't in goal. So judge it on Pope at the start of the season, and it's pretty good.
We were defensively pretty solid up until he got injured, and then obviously the wheels sort of fell off after that. But yeah, no, good pick. I think long term, potentially the best option, just with so many options now in defence and uncertainty around trips.
In his 15 points, 15 starts last season, is just under 4 points per game.
Yeah.
So if you want to do that over a season for someone, it seems very little doubt about him starting all the time. Yeah, I think you know what you're going to get. Right, let's talk. And we don't have to speak much because I think it's fairly obvious. Alexander Isak, mate.
Well, I've been saying since he signed, he's in the top 3 strikers in the league, and I think that's been borne out. And there's talk of him potentially being, if he stays fit, which I think he will do with 1 game a week, hopefully. Golden boot potential, like massively underpriced. Like, I think if you were to pick out five prices in the entire game, I think he would be one of the ones. The fact he's Watkins is underpriced as well, but yeah, absolute lock. Surprised he's not in more teams. 55% ownership. I don't know what the other 45% of teams are doing.
The interesting narrative from FPL is, I think when you think of those, you think have been underpriced. You're quite right. Isak, Watkins, you'd make a case for Havertz. You'd make a case for Solanke. And obviously, I think part of that is Haaland. And it's caused a nice debate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you, I think, I generally think Isak could win a Golden Boot this year. I think he's actually capable of being the highest scoring player in the game if you can get the games out of him, mate. Which, with no European football, there's a chance now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at his log; he only got 4 assists. I think he's well more capable of getting than that. 21 goals, 4 assists. Like, he could, if he was fit for the entire season. You wouldn't be surprised if he was 20, 25 and 10 potentially. I think he's got the capacity to do that.
I think he's capable more.
Well, if we sign a right winger that's not Almiron,
he's essentially, he's near enough for a return a game. He's nearly tracking to that now. His form at the end of the season was obviously outstanding. He scored 1 more goal than his XG, so it's not like a massive overperformance or anything. 21 goals from 27 starts. With that opening fixture as well. I think probably more the debate is not, are you going to start with him? It's probably the 2 questions would probably, A, do you captain him in game week 1? And B, do you intend to stick with him for the long term? Or do you view that the first couple of fixtures and then look at Watkins, or when Havertz has got his swing of fixtures in, say, 6, and it gets that's when you play Manchester City, for example?
Well, right now he's the most owned player in the game. So you treat
He
him,
should be.
yeah, and you treat him as such. So you treat him as one of those. Forget the price. He's the most owned player in the game. The potential is there to hurt you every game if you don't captain him. And you're not 55%. I guess is we're not able to look at effective ownership and stuff, but I'd imagine that EO is going to be up to 90%, 95,
I'm going to
maybe
guess
more.
you intend to captain him game week 1.
Oh yeah, yes, that was not even a question. He's captain.
I intend to do that as well. I said if when the pricing come out that I think even if it'd been 11, he'd have gone in for me. So
Yeah,
at 8.5, I've got nothing to think about. He just needs to come through this weekend unscathed. Does Callum Wilson offer any threat to him now? And is he fit at the moment or not?
down 50. I think the app has him at 50% for the first game. He's back in training. I think he had a minor off on. He had like a back issue, so he's not. I think he might miss the first game. Potentially that we're going to sign a third striker in Osula. I think that sounds
I've
like
heard
it's quite
that.
close to the old Sheffield United's kind of youth player, but he's very much there. I'm actually like quite happy that Wilson's staying for another season. I know a lot of people wanted to see him moved on to get some money into the club, but in terms of like a backup striker, he won't see himself as a backup striker. It's not the sort of personality he is. He'll when he's fit, he'll be unhappy if he's not playing. But the reality is, I think he should realise that he's number two. He'll get the cup games. Great option for the last 15, 20 minutes. Do I expect Isak to play as many minutes as all the other premium forwards? Potentially not. I think he still, in some games, might come out early, depending on game state. You might see more of him and Wilson potentially as well. I think Tonali coming back into the team gives us a few more options, and structurally and tactically, we might be able to get both of them in. I think if we've got a third striker in the squad that's capable of coming off the bench, yeah. Whereas previously it's always been, well, if we play both of them, we've got nothing to come off the bench.
I think when we hit December and you've got a midweek set of fixtures and then obviously the Christmas period, then there's more of a conversation. I think until then, with no European football, could he be involved in the odd Carabao Cup side? Yeah, he could be involved, but certainly would be protected. I'm fairly certain of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think you're going to get close to a 90-minute Alexander Isak here because I think as well if you're chasing games, I agree if a game's won early, yeah, get him off at 70 minutes. You know, if you're 4-0 up against Southampton, he may well come off early. But I'd also think he's probably done the bloody damage by then under that sort of scenario. I think we will see at times this year where you're chasing a game that he'll go into like the 10 position. We know that he can go into wide areas. We don't particularly like that as much. But he's obviously very good at taking his man on. I think he's an absolutely elite centre forward. And there's no way that he's not in my team unless he was to get unfortunately injured this weekend.
yeah.
Let's finish off with a few quick fires. What's your advice into Anthony Gordon owners? Does it take him out?
Wait and see this weekend, as you said. I'm still if he plays a full 90 minutes, I think that's the only thing that would convince me to put him back in. At the moment, I've got Murphy in my team because I'm looking at a game week 4 wildcard. And I
So
think he'll
that's a good shout, isn't it? At 5.5. I know that won't appeal to many, but he'll probably start on the right. Is that
yeah,
correct?
yeah. Almiron was shocking, and we lost our last friendly in Japan. I know the weather conditions were terrible, really hot, but he didn't play well. He's not had the minutes. Murphy's starting the season, and I think he'll stay in. Even if we sign a right winger, they're going to take a few weeks to get bedded in. I don't think Barnes on the left, Gordon on the right is. We haven't had a chance to see it. If Gordon hadn't gone to the Euros, which he, let's be fair, probably shouldn't have with the minutes he played, you might have seen a bit more of that in pre-season. But I think it's Barnes right now. I think it's Barnes starting on the left, Murphy starting on the right, and I think for 5.5 million for the first couple of weeks of the season, yeah, he's kind of my pick in that bracket.
I think Jacob Murphy, for those who've identified they want a wild card really early, I think Jacob Murphy is a brilliant pick. I really do. I'd arguably maybe favour him if this what you're saying about Gordon is true. I think the reason no one's spoken about him is it's like it's Isak, Gordon, and a defensive. If people want to go free, so I can understand why his ownership's under 1%. If you're saying there's a serious potential threat to Gordon, people I think will naturally want to look at a second offensive Newcastle because of game one rather than a second defensive. It will draw people to look at Barnes, but I think possibly just for the first couple of game weeks, Murphy is probably the best 5.5.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's in my team.
But it's competition in terms of you want other Newcastle players. So I understand that. So there's layers to that.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at 6 plus, Gordon will be in my team when I wildcard, most likely.
Okay. Should I therefore, for someone who might bench boost and then wildcard straight out, should I be looking at Harvey Barnes then?
No, you should be looking at Murphy. If you're doing what you're doing in
Really?
game week 1. Are you doing a game week 1 bench boost? Is that what you're?
I might be, yeah.
He's 2 million cheaper than Gordon, 1 million cheaper. He's going to play 75 to 80 minutes, maybe 90. I think we want shot of Almiron out of the club in the next 2 weeks. Almiron might not even be at the club, or there might be rumours that he's leaving, in which case we won't want to play him. You might get 5-10 minutes of Barnes or Gordon on the right, but yeah, if Murphy comes through this weekend, he scored 4 in pre-season, a couple of assists.
Yeah. And he's basically, by the way, he's basically an attacking return last season.
His numbers are great.
Kind of near enough every 100 minutes.
Yeah. He crosses the ball and he's not so I'm pretty set on him unless I see something this upcoming weekend. But I think particularly if you're looking at Haaland, which I currently have got on my team as well, that extra 2 million saving on Gordon, and also he becomes potentially rotatable as well at that price. So if you're looking at Salah and looking at Haaland, I think 5-5 for Murphy, who's going to start as an addition to Isak, because you're not going to get many points from him. As captain him, I think is the way to go. And defensively, I think you should only be looking at Newcastle as a rotation piece. So the 4.5s to me, Pope and the 4.5s is the way I'd go.
Okay, go on then. Predicted game week 111 as it stands on Tuesday morning.
Okay, Pope, 100% lock. All the other keepers are shocking. Right back as it stands, Livramento. Centre back, Schar, left back, Hall. Midfield 3 is going to be Bruno, Joelinton, Longstaff. That's the 3. I don't think Willock's played enough minutes, but he will eat into hopefully Longstaff's minutes in that midfield. And then up front, I think it will be Isak, Barnes, and Murphy.
Very interesting. Which 3 do you think you'll start with?
At the moment, I've got Isak, captain, Murphy, and Hall with the plan to wildcard in 4. At which point, I'll only be keeping one of those.
So you think you won't have Gordon against Tottenham in game week 3?
No, I'll have Murphy because I think Murphy scored more points than Gordon in that fixture. I can't remember. There's so many goals and assists.
Jacob Murphy has scored a few goals against Tottenham.
Yeah.
Mind you, which Newcastle player hasn't over the last couple of years? It's worth saying. Yeah, that's his game back as well, isn't it? His game week 3.
Oh man, I can't wait.
Oh, great. It always falls onto Tottenham's lap like that, I swear. Si, pleasure. Thank you, mate. Where do you think you finish?
3rd. If we get the 2 signings.
I think you're capable. But I think it's the same for everybody in that 3rd to 8th cluster. They could all be really close and could finish in any order. But I'm near certain that you will have a better season, I think. I'll say 4th, I think, for yourselves. Good luck for the season. Thank you very much, mate. Next up on Correspondent Week, because we love a bit of state ownership, don't we, on Planet FPL? It's down the A1M, across the M62, or get yourself on a train to York and head west towards Manchester Piccadilly. Get a tram if the game's not on, but otherwise you probably need to walk towards the Etihad Stadium. Next up, on episode 11 of Correspondent Week, is Johnny Pringle talking about Manchester City. So good luck for the season, mate. Cue music, please, man child.